All right, guys, allow me to be crystal clear on this one from the get-go. There is no such thing as the male midlife crisis. What there is only a midlife awakening, a realization, or possibly even an epiphany. What society likes to label as a crisis is actually the moment that a man finally starts to see clearly, guys. He starts to see the world, and more importantly, himself, for what it really is. All right, guys, let me give you some of the truths here. Many guys, most guys, they don't fall apart in midlife. They don't go into this sort of crisis mode. In fact, they wake up. They're going to look around and they're going to realize that their career, this sort of, maybe the 9 to 5, isn't exactly what they envisioned. This sort of bill of goods that they were sold as a younger man. I myself went through this, and I came to this decision about a decade ago. But up until last year, right around this time, I sort of stuck it out. I sat there. I was the dutiful sort of guy that stuck it out. But working myself up to a VP position, guys, I had enough was enough. Oftentimes, guys, the relationships that men find themselves in, whether it be a long-term, relationship or a marriage, didn't quite deliver what they were sold or promised. A lot of guys find themselves in sexless, loveless marriages and going through the motions. They traded their time for sort of security and safety. Most certainly not freedom, guys, and most definitely not sovereignty. Again, it was sold under this guise of safety. But a lot of guys in midlife are going to start to realize that safe is not fulfilled. Those are two different things, guys. Safety is not freedom. And then they built a life that sort of looks good on Facebook, on social media. From the outside, people looking in may think, this guy's doing okay. But something just doesn't feel right. Something is most certainly amiss. And for the first time in what is possibly decades, guys, a man will look in the mirror and stop lying to himself. That's not a crisis. What that is clarity. This is a realization of who he is, and more importantly, realization of his value. So, guys, let's look at the lie, and it is a lie that society pushes. So what happens around this time, may say, guys, 35, 40, 45, 50, somewhere in there, the midlife crisis. So society's going to step in and say, well, he is just going through a phase. He's being reckless, careless. He's spending money on cars, vacations. He may even get a divorce. Egad, he's trying to relive his youth. He most definitely needs to grow up. He's a Peter Pan, and he needs to now, if he is in not in a relationship or maybe going through a divorce, he most definitely needs to date his age. Now, mind you, guys, there are no such tropes, memes, or condemnation for women when they go through their spiritual awakening or on their journey of self-discovery. Anyways, guys, then why the heck do we do this for men? Well, because when a man who wakes up, a guy who has that realization, is a man who becomes hard to control. He's a man who truly understands his value, and he becomes dangerous, especially to the opposite sex. When a man, sort of realizes that he is the prize. If you haven't watched that, guys, watch this video here. But guys start to realize this. And let me be real about it. A man who starts to question everything he's built is dangerous to the system that relies on his compliance. Let's be real, guys. The system wants you to wake up, drive in traffic every day, work from 8 till 5, come home, eat some garbage food, stare at Netflix, go to bed, wash, rinse, and repeat for the next 3-4 decades. But a man who truly understands his value and what he brings to the table, again, as I said, he becomes somewhat dangerous. He's no longer that cog. He is no longer a compliant sheep, frankly, being led to the slaughter. So what happens then? Well, society, and often females, are going to sort of pathologize this awakening. And that's where they use the word crisis. Crisis has no positive, connotation to it. So what's going to happen? They're going to shame him. And not just women, guys, and this is possibly worse, and I think it is worse, is when men sort of try to sort of white knight to their wives or, their girlfriends or to other women, that this guy is going through a crisis. And there's a term for this, guys, and, I think it's sort of, Jordan Peterson, who I don't love, used this term, but basically it's called sneaky fucker game. And yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's guys trying to sort of appeal to women by sort of knocking down their fellow men. It's rather pathetic, guys. And please don't be that guy. They sort of try and contain him, push him back in that box. Like, no, sir, you can't do this. They want to push this guy back into alignment, get this guy back in his place, and remind this guy of, who the fuck do you think you are, mister, for even questioning these things. So here's the reframe, guys. Let's call it for what it actually is: a value recalibration. So at 35 to 50, the guy who sort of has this awakening or this realization, he finally understands his sort of SMV, his sexual market value. Whether he's in a marriage relationship or whatever, doesn't matter. It's not declining. So let's say at 35, 38, even into your 40s, a man who's put in the work, if he optimizes for it, his SMV is climbing. And women his age are long past their peak. This realization, this causes a lot of consternation for women. That's why it has to be shame. His experience can now compound as leverage. Time becomes real, guys. One of the things here is, and I've went through this myself as well, is you realize that your life is at least probably half over, maybe even a little further. In my case, that you have fewer days ahead of you than behind you. You start to take time a little more seriously. It's not theoretical anymore. Your standards sharpen. And this is a big one, guys. The people, the time that you devote to nonsense, you start to get rid of all that. You get rid of energy vampires. You get rid of all the bullshit and nonsense. Your tolerance for bullshit drops to zero. Maybe as a younger man, you kind of did some things you didn't want to do. Again, we talk about time. As you realize the value of your time, this tolerance for BS literally gets eliminated. And there's the first time in their life when he actually has awareness. But also at the same time, when a man gets this awareness, guys, he has the resources. Again, I have to preface this by saying, guys, if the man has optimized, so you kept your body in shape, your career, your finances, you've become an interesting man and you have these resources, that combination is massively powerful, guys. So many of the things guys have wanted for years, as a younger man, he can actually, actualize them now. So let me give you an example. The big one is, here's one that's always sort of gets shamed. A guy in, say, he's 40, early 40s, he goes out and gets that sort of sports car. Well, I was 19, 20. I wanted a Porsche. I wanted a Ferrari. I wanted whatever. I just couldn't fucking afford it. It doesn't mean now that you can't afford it, that getting it is somehow juvenile or something to be ridiculed or mocked. Guy wants to travel more. He wants to see the world or just, do things that at an earlier stage in life, he didn't have the means, probably even the time to do. This is not a crisis, guys. Here's a favorite of mine, the sort of Peter Pan accusation. Guys, I heard this one, more often than not. Maybe not the actual words, but Peter Pan, but something to the ilk of you're acting like a child, like a kid. You just want to play games. Dating younger women is quote unquote creepy. Now, let's disregard the fact that most of these women, the ones that are shaming, ridiculing, and mocking you, they were the same ones dating older men when they could back then. We'll let that go. They tell you to grow up and again, know your place, know your role, and don't think that you're anything special, mister. You know, these are some of the things you are going to hear when you go through your crisis, or more aptly, your awakening, your realization. No, men aren't regressing. They're reclaiming their lives. There's a big fucking difference. Again, that car the guys always wanted, the traveling, the dating, that's not immaturity, guys. What that is agency. A man has agency. And for the first time in a long time, he no longer needs to seek anybody's approval. He stopped performing a role, living as some archetype that he, thought that society or his family, his wife, his friends, or, other people wanted him to perform. And he's no longer living off somebody else's script, on what society, as I said, expects him to do, what other people expect him to do. He's come to the realization, as I said, he also has the agency to make these decisions for himself. And, other people be damned. This guy is living deliberately, guys, according to his terms. And why? Because he can. Here's the real crisis, guys. And I think it's a truth that a lot of people won't sort of say. What the real midlife crisis is, if the guys are going to have one, if there is such a thing as a midlife crisis, it's never waking the fuck up. It's staying the same. It's accepting average and mediocre in that quote unquote safe job, that unfulfilling relationship, when you settled, for, like I said, if you're in a sexless marriage, loveless marriage, and you have this sort of sunk cost fallacy that you've put in this much time, so you might as well stick it out. In your predictable routines, Monday through Friday, getting drunk on the weekends, watching the games, doing the same bullshit, week after week, year after year for decades. And then that quiet resentment of anybody who's sort of had this awakening that's, decided they're not going to no longer settle and they're going to sort of capitalize on the second half of their life. That resentment builds and these are the same guys that shame. And if there is a crisis, guys, if there is a tragedy, it's that. It's never waking the fuck up. It's not the guy that says, hey, I got 20 or 30 strong years left and I'm not wasting another minute. Guys, I appreciate you if you stuck it out this long. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I know not everybody's going to agree with this in my assessment, and I'd love to know your thoughts, good, bad, indifferent. And if you do have a thought that sort of goes against the grain, tell me why. Guys, also do me a favor, hit the like, hit the subscribe, pass this on to guys who could benefit from this. Guys, this isn't sort of a mental breakdown in midlife. You're not losing your shit. There is no crisis. This is when a man finally starts, one, seeing clearly, thinking independently, and then acting intentionally. I'm going to go through those one more time, guys. It's not a crisis. You see clearly, you think independently, and you act intentionally. So call it whatever you want, but it is most definitely not a crisis. It's a man realizing his life is his. All right, guys. YouTube is telling me we need to watch this video next. So check that one out, guys. Appreciate you sticking with me. And remember, live deliberately.